The champagne was still cold. The flowers were still fresh. The photographers were finally gone. September 25th, 1954. 2 a.m. The honeymoon suite at the Hotel Bergenstock, Switzerland. The most photographed wedding of the year was over. Now it was just Audrey Hepburn and her new husband, Mel Ferrer, alone for the first time as man and wife. Everyone said they were perfect together. He was 37, sophisticated, a director and actor with continental charm. She was 25, at the absolute peak of her fame. Roman Holiday had won her an Oscar. Sabrina had made her a fashion icon. The world was at her feet. And Mel Ferrer, handsome and worldly, seemed like the perfect match for Hollywood's newest princess. But at 2 a.m., still in her wedding dress, Audrey would hear something that would change everything. Something that would poison the next 14 years of her life. Something that would slowly, methodically, destroy the woman the world adored. Mel was standing by the window, looking out at the Swiss mountains. Still in his tuxedo, Audrey was taking off her jewelry, exhausted but happy. It had been a beautiful day. Small ceremony, just close friends. Her mother crying. Mel's children from his previous marriages being sweet. Everything perfect. "Audrey," Mel said, not turning from the window. "We need to talk about something." She looked up. His tone was different. Not the warm, charming voice he'd used all day. Something else. Something colder. "What is it?" she asked. He turned to face her. "I need you to understand something about our marriage, about our careers, about how this is going to work." She waited. A small flutter of unease in her stomach. "You're very successful right now," he continued. "More successful than me. That's fine. I'm proud of you. But we need to establish some ground rules about how we navigate this industry as a married couple." Ground rules. On their wedding night. Audrey felt the first whisper of something wrong, but she pushed it away. He was just being practical. Adult. This was what mature marriages did. They communicated. "The roles you take," Mel said, "they need to be discussed, decided together, as a team. You can't just accept whatever comes your way. We need to think strategically about what's best for both of our careers." "Of course," Audrey said carefully. "We can discuss everything together." "Not discuss," Mel corrected. "Decide. Together. But understand this, Audrey. I'm older. I have more experience. I've been in this business longer. When there's a disagreement about what's right for you, for us, you need to trust my judgment." The unease was getting stronger now. "Mel, what exactly are you saying?" He sat down on the bed next to her, took her hands. His grip was firm. Too firm. "I'm saying that I love you. I'm saying that we're a partnership now. But I'm also saying that I won't be the man whose wife is the star while he's the forgotten one in the background. I've seen those marriages. I've seen how the husband becomes an accessory, a purse holder. That's not going to be us." "I would never make you feel that way," Audrey said quietly. "You wouldn't mean to," Mel agreed. "But Hollywood does it anyway. The way they talk about you. The way they ignore me when we're together. That's already started. I felt it today, at our own wedding. People were more excited to see you than to celebrate us." "Mel, that's just because of the films. It doesn't mean—" "It means exactly what I think it means," he cut her off. "And we're going to manage it. Together. Starting now. You have film offers coming in. Big ones. Billy Wilder wants you for another picture. William Wyler is interested. But we need to be strategic. We need to think about projects we can do together, where I can direct you, where I can produce, where we build something together instead of you building a solo career that leaves me behind." This wasn't a conversation. This was a declaration. Audrey felt something cold settle in her chest. "I love acting," she said carefully. "It's what I do. It's who I am." "And I love directing," Mel said, "and producing, and acting, and I'm good at it, Audrey. Better than Hollywood gives me credit for. But I need you to help me. I need you to be my partner in building my career, not just your own." How? The question came out smaller than she intended. By being selective. By turning down roles that don't serve us as a couple. By being available for projects I'm developing. By understanding that your fame can open doors for both of us, and we need to walk through those doors together. Audrey pulled her hands away from his, stood up, walked to the other side of the room. Her wedding dress felt heavy, suffocating. You want me to turn down good roles, she said slowly. So I'm available for your projects. I want us to build something together, Mel corrected. I want a marriage where we're equals, where we're both successful, where I'm not known as Audrey Hepburn's husband but as Mel Ferrer, her creative partner. But what if your projects aren't right for me? What if the roles other directors are offering are better? Then we make them right for you, Mel said, an edge creeping into his voice. That's what partnership means, Audrey. Sacrifice, compromise, understanding that a marriage is more important than a career. She turned to look at him, really look at him. And for the first time since they'd met a year ago, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. Not love, not partnership. Need. Desperate, consuming need. He didn't just love her. He needed her success, needed to attach himself to it, needed to use it to fix whatever was broken in his own career. Mel, she said quietly, are you saying that if I don't do this, if I don't prioritize your projects over my own career, our marriage will have problems? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm saying that I won't be humiliated. I won't be the man who gets forgotten, while his wife becomes a legend. I won't be second to you. If that's what you're asking, then yes. If you can't understand that, if you can't make this partnership work the way I need it to work, then we're going to have problems. It was 2:30 a.m. They'd been married for 12 hours, and Audrey Hepburn understood with devastating clarity that she'd made a terrible mistake. But she was 25 years old, raised Catholic, taught that marriage was forever, taught that divorce was failure. And she just had the most photographed wedding of the year. Everyone said they were perfect together. Everyone was so happy for her. So she didn't say what she was thinking. She didn't say, "This is wrong. This is toxic. This is not what love looks like." Instead, she said, "I understand. We'll figure it out together." And Mel smiled, relieved, satisfied. He came to her, kissed her. "I knew you'd understand. That's why I love you. You're smart. You get it." She let him kiss her, let him hold her, and tried to ignore the voice in her head screaming that she'd just agreed to her own slow destruction. The next 14 years proved that voice right. Within 6 months, Mel was interfering with her career decisions. War and Peace came up, a major production, a role that could have been extraordinary. But Mel thought the director wouldn't give him enough creative input. He convinced Audrey to be difficult in negotiations, to make demands that would complicate the production. The role went to someone else. "See," Mel said, "now we're free for the project I'm developing." His project fell apart, but Audrey had lost War and Peace. He directed her in Mayerling, a television production. It was fine, nothing special, but Mel told everyone it was a triumph of their partnership, that he'd brought out something in her that other directors couldn't. When Fred Zinnemann offered her The Nun Story, a serious, challenging role, Mel was resistant. "You'll be in the Congo for months, away from me, away from our marriage. Is that what you want?" But Audrey fought for that one. She needed it. Needed to prove to herself that she was still an actress, not just Mel Ferrer's wife. The Nun Story was nominated for 8 Academy Awards. Audrey's performance was considered one of her finest. Mel barely congratulated her. Instead, he started developing another project for them. Something where he'd direct, where he'd be the creative force and she'd be the vessel for his vision. Friends started noticing. "Why aren't you doing more films?" they'd ask Audrey. "You're at the peak of your career. You should be working constantly." "I'm prioritizing my marriage," she'd say. And she believed it. She'd been taught that a good wife made sacrifices, that a good wife supported her husband's dreams even when it meant subordinating her own. But inside, something was dying. The light that made Audrey Hepburn special was dimming. The joy she felt performing was being slowly strangled by guilt. Every time she wanted to accept a role, she had to weigh it against Mel's reaction, his disappointment, his subtle implications that she was choosing career over marriage. By 1960, they'd been married 6 years. Audrey had made a handful of films. Mel's career had not improved despite her efforts to include him in her projects, and the pattern was clear to anyone paying attention. Audrey Hepburn was shrinking, becoming smaller, less vibrant. The woman who'd lit up the screen in Roman Holiday was fading. People blamed it on different things. She had a miscarriage in 1955, another in 1959. The stress of trying to have children while maintaining a career, the pressure of fame. But those close to her knew the truth. It was Mel, his constant need for reassurance, his jealousy of her success, his subtle undermining of her confidence. "Maybe you're not as good as they say," he'd tell her after a lukewarm review. "Maybe you've just been lucky with good directors. Maybe you need someone who really understands you, someone who can guide you." He meant himself. He always meant himself. In 1960, she got pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy held. Mel Ferrer was born in July. Audrey threw herself into motherhood with the same intensity she'd once brought to acting. Finally, something Mel couldn't control. Something that was hers. But motherhood became another weapon in his arsenal. "You can't take that role. You have a son. What kind of mother chooses her career over her child?" Never mind that Mel continued acting and directing. Never mind that fathers in Hollywood worked constantly without anyone questioning their devotion to their children. For Audrey, every professional choice became a referendum on her worth as a mother. By 1964, 10 years into the marriage, Audrey was doing roughly one film every 2 years. Stars of her caliber typically did 1 or 2 a year. She was turning down incredible opportunities. My Fair Lady almost didn't happen because Mel was opposed to her working with George Cukor, whom he considered a rival. But My Fair Lady was too big to refuse, too important. Audrey fought for it, and the shoot was like coming alive again. Being on set without Mel constantly present, working with a master director who valued her talent instead of trying to control it. She remembered who she'd been before the wedding night conversation, before the 14 years of slow suffocation. The film was a massive success, but Audrey didn't get the Oscar nomination. The role went to Julie Andrews in the stage version because Andrews had originated it on Broadway. Hollywood voters were split. The snub hurt. Mel's reaction hurt more. "See? This is what happens when you don't listen to me. I told you Cukor was the wrong choice, but you had to have your way." Something broke in Audrey that day. Some last thread of belief that this marriage could be saved, that Mel's behavior was just insecurity that could be healed with enough love, enough sacrifice, enough patience. She realized he didn't want a wife. He wanted an employee, an accessory to his career, a famous face he could use to open doors that his talent alone couldn't unlock. And she realized she'd spent 14 years giving him exactly that. In 1965, she shot How to Steal a Million with Peter O'Toole. The set was light, fun, creative, everything her marriage wasn't. Co-star William Wyler noticed the change in her. "You seem different," he said. "Freer." "I'm remembering what it's like to enjoy this," Audrey admitted. "To just act without it being a statement about my marriage or my worth as a wife." In 1966, she did Wait Until Dark, a thriller, playing a blind woman terrorized in her own home. The role was challenging, intense. She threw everything into it. And when she watched the dailies, she saw something on screen she hadn't seen in years. The spark, the life. The Audrey Hepburn who'd won an Oscar at 24. That's when she knew she had to leave Mel. It wasn't dramatic. There was no final fight, no confrontation. Just a quiet realization. She'd spent 14 years dying slowly so Mel Ferrer could feel like a success. And it hadn't worked. He wasn't more successful. She wasn't happier. Their marriage wasn't stronger. The wedding night promise that they'd build something together as equals had been a lie from the start. In December 1968, they announced their separation. The official statement was diplomatic. Irreconcilable differences. The truth was simpler. Audrey had finally chosen herself. The divorce was finalized in 1969. Mel went on to marry twice more. Both times to younger actresses. Both marriages followed the same pattern. He needed to be with someone whose light he could dim to make his own glow brighter. Audrey, freed from the marriage, did something unexpected. She didn't throw herself into more films. She'd learned something in those 14 years. Fame wasn't worth the cost if you lost yourself in the pursuit of it. Success meant nothing if you were miserable. Instead, she became selective. Chose projects that spoke to her. Robin and Marian in 1976, where she and Sean Connery played aging lovers with grace and honesty. A few television films. And then, in the 1980s, she found her true calling, UNICEF, humanitarian work. Using her fame not to get more famous, but to help children in crisis. The UNICEF work, she said in an interview near the end of her life, feels more important than any film I ever made. More real, more meaningful. When asked about her first marriage, she was diplomatic. Mel and I wanted different things. I wanted a partnership. He wanted something else. It took me too long to understand that we were never going to want the same thing. But to close friends, she was more honest. The wedding night, she told one confidant. I knew on the wedding night that something was wrong. He told me who he was that night. And I spent 14 years trying to pretend he was someone else, trying to make him into the man I thought I'd married instead of accepting who he really was. Why did you stay so long? The friend asked. Because I was 25. Because I'd been taught that marriage was forever. Because everyone said we were perfect. And because I kept thinking that if I just loved him enough, sacrificed enough, gave up enough, he'd become the partner I needed. She paused. But you can't love someone into being different. You can only lose yourself trying. Mel Ferrer died in 2008. Audrey had been gone since 1993. But their story remains a cautionary tale about what happens when love becomes leverage, when partnership becomes control, when a wedding night conversation reveals a truth that takes 14 years to escape. The champagne was cold. The flowers were fresh. The photographers were gone. And at 2 a.m. in a Swiss hotel room, a 25-year-old woman learned that the man she'd just married didn't want a wife. He wanted a career strategy, a fame supplement, a light to steal instead of a light to shine with. She gave him 14 years. He took everything she offered and demanded more. And when she finally left, when she finally chose herself over his need to control her, she discovered something powerful. The light he'd been dimming for 14 years didn't go out. It had just been waiting for her to remember that she didn't need his permission to shine. That's the real story of Audrey Hepburn's first marriage. Not a love story, a survival story. The story of a woman who made a mistake at 25 and spent 14 years paying for it before finally giving herself permission to leave. The question isn't why she stayed so long. The question is, how many people are staying right now? How many people heard something on their wedding night, or their first date, or their 10th anniversary, that told them exactly who their partner really was? And how many are still pretending they heard something else? Audrey Hepburn's story is a reminder. When someone tells you who they are, believe them, even if it's your wedding night, even if everyone says you're perfect together, even if you've already said I do, especially then.